It's a common complaint I hear from people trying to learn Affinity 3. Why does Affinity look different on my computer? Well, there's a number of possible reasons which I'll share in this video. But more than that, I'll explain what you can change and control about your layout. Now, when I wrote my book Essential Affinity 3, I realized this was going to be a problem. My solution was to ask readers to reset their workspace at the start of the book. This has worked well, but I've come to realize that there are still differences people run into and which are confusing new users. So let's start by looking at resetting the workspace and a few things that you might not realize about the Affinity layout. When we look at the Affinity interface, what we see are a range of studio panels which can be grouped on the left and right side of the screen. You can see here in the Pixel Studio that all my panels are on the right side of the interface. But if I switch to the Layout Studio, we now see the panels on both sides of the interface. Which panels are visible and how they're arranged in the screen is all part of the workspace layout. If we look at the Pixel Studio again, we can see that I have the stock panel in the middle group. Now, we can drag that out of the group so that it becomes a floating panel. If you're working on a big display, it may help you to have some of the panels floating in this way so that they appear near to where you're working. That can make working with things like the brush tool much easier because it's within easy reach of the place you're working. It's also possible to dock any of the panels on the left or right side of the interface. For example, I can drag the stock panel and dock it on the left studio area. Not only that, but we can create groups of panels on either the left or the right side of the interface to help organize our screen. If we then go to the window menu, we can see multiple submenus at the bottom. Now these contain a list of all the different panels that allow us to control which ones are visible and which are hidden. Notice that there's a general submenu which contains panels which appear in any of the studios. The items with a tick next to them are the ones that are visible, and selecting a panel toggles the visibility off and on. For example, I'll click the Attics panel now to make it visible. We then have a separate submenu for some of the other studios, such as the Pixel Studio. This lists the panels specific to those studios, and it allows us to toggle the visibility of them on and off. Confusingly though, not every studio appears as a submenu, for example, retouching and color grading, and I don't see any real logic as to which panels appear in which submenus. I've no idea why this is, and it does feel a little bit unfinished. But Canva has introduced a much better option for managing your panels, which I'll share with you shortly. Now, there's one other thing that I want you to see in the Windows menu, which is the Panels submenu. Here we can see a left and right option with a tick mark next to them. Using these, it is possible to control the visibility of the left or right side panels. If I select the left option, it toggles the visibility off. That then hides all the panels on the left of the interface. And if we select it again to toggle the visibility back on, all the panels that have been docked there actually become visible again. In addition to hiding panels using the menu options, it's also possible to hide individual panels by closing them. You can do this when they're floating by clicking the small X icon at the top left. Alternatively, you can click the menu option on the right of the panel. This displays a menu option to close the panel or close an entire group of panels. There's also something else in the menu that's useful, which is access to the panels dialog. This is a really useful addition to Affinity because it tells us which of the panels are visible and it lets us turn them on and off. What's nice about this is that hiding or showing a panel doesn't close the dialog, unlike with the menu. Now for something else that's important. Whilst I've been explaining all these panels, I've been changing the workspace layout, which is something that's very easy to do. And because Affinity remembers changes between the sessions, the layout can change significantly over time. If you look at my screen now, it probably doesn't match your screen. This can make it very difficult for someone trying to learn Affinity from a video or book, which is where resetting the workspace comes in. If you click on the window menu at the top, then the panel submenu, you'll find a reset option. Clicking this resets the studio panel layout back to the default. Now, if you're going to do this, it's a good idea to save your existing workspace first, unless of course you're happy to lose it. To do that, just click the option to add a preset. The new preset then saves the interface panel layout. Just be sure to name it something that you'll recognize in the future. You can see in my menu that I've already saved the layout from my Essential Affinity book. If I select that, it changes the Pixel Studio layout so that only the essential panels for the photo editing are visible. You'll also find that each of the studios in Affinity has its own layout that you can configure and save separately. For example, if we switch to the Layout Studio and I go to the window menu, you'll see I haven't saved any presets. Then when I'm back in the Pixel Studio, we see my Essential Affinity layout. But the panels aren't the only part of the interface we can configure. Let's look at a few more of the options that are catching people out. If you look at the Tools palette on the left of the interface, you'll see there's 3 dots near the bottom. Click those and it opens the Customise Tools dialog. This is where we can select any of the tools available in Affinity 3 and add them to the Tools palette, or we can even remove tools. You'll also find that the Tools palette in each of the studios can be configured separately. All we need to do is click and drag new tools onto the palette, or we can drag them off the palette and onto the dialog to remove them. If you're struggling to find a tool, you can use the drop down at the top to filter tools by studio. Alternatively, if you know the name of a tool, just click on the search option to search for it. For example, if I enter GLI into the search bar, I can find the glitch tool. Something else that you can do is to change the number of columns in the palette. By default, the tools are arranged in a single column, but you can change that to 2, 3 or more columns. If you find the Tools palette gets a bit of a mess though, just click the Reset Tools option at the top and you'll return to the default arrangement. Another way to get to the Tools dialog is by right-clicking on the Tools palette. This displays a small menu where we can choose the Customise Tools option. But the menu also has a couple of other options that we can customize. One that I think is particularly useful if you're just learning Affinity 3 is Rich Tooltips. If I hover my mouse pointer over a tool in the Tools palette, when the tooltips are turned on, a tooltip appears explaining what the tool is, how to use it, and even gives a link to the help file. The other option worth discussing is the Subtools palette. By default, I keep my Subtool palette hidden because I find it gets in the way, but some people prefer to have it visible. When it's visible, it shows any tools that are in the same group, because not every icon in the Tools palette is visible at any given time. Some of these icons are part of groups of related tools, for example the Marquee tool. We know that there is more than one tool in this group because we can see a small arrow at the bottom right corner. When we click a tool in the group and the Subtool palette is visible, it displays the other tools in that group, making them easy to select. But when it's hidden, we need to move our mouse pointer over the visible icon and click either the bottom corner or click and hold on the icon. This displays then the rest of the tools in the group so we can select the one we want. Use whichever of these methods is the easiest for you. Just remember that this is an option and it may be another reason why your screen doesn't match mine. Next, let's turn our attention to the toolbars, which are located at the top of the screen. Here we have the Affinity toolbar, as I call it, along the top, and then below it is the context-sensitive toolbar. What's special about the context-sensitive toolbar is that it changes depending on which tool we select in the Tools palette. And if I switch between tools, you can see the context changes. But there's something else that also happens with the context-sensitive toolbar. If I click and drag it, it turns into a floating toolbar. This seems to be happening to me frequently, although I can't work out why. But unfortunately, once it's happened, there's no obvious way to dock it back to the toolbar again. If this happens to you and you want to dock it to the top of the screen, the way to do it is in the View menu. This is where you'll find the context-sensitive option, where you can then choose Dock to reattach the toolbar. Now, while you're there, you may notice that there are menus to control the tools palette, which we've already looked at, and the top toolbar. So let's look at that one next. On the left side of the top toolbar, we have icons that represent the different studios in Affinity. And to the right of this are 3 dots. When we click that icon, we see an option to display which studios are visible in the toolbar. We can also create a custom studio of our own, although I haven't really found a good use for that yet. Then to the right of these, we see other information and icons. If I right-click on the toolbar, you can see an option to show just icons or icons and text. Again, if you're just getting used to Affinity, having the icons and text visible can be helpful. We also see that there's a customize option. When we click this, we can customize the toolbar by dragging and dropping icons onto it. Unfortunately, there isn't a reset option here like with the other things that we've been customizing. Now, let's go back to the panels because there are even more options that we can customize. The panels themselves are arranged by default into 3 groups, but we can arrange them into more groups than that if we want to. All we need to do is drag and drop a panel into a new area. Doing this, it's also possible to dock the panels into existing groups, or if you move between groups, it creates a new group. Just remember though, you may find that you can run out of space and that the panels become harder to use when you have more groups. Something else you'll find is that at the top right of each of the groups, there's a small context-sensitive drop-down menu. We already looked at this earlier as a way to close panels or to access the panels dialog, but this also shows other options for configuring some panels. For example, if I have the Layers panel selected, I can change the size of the thumbnail or change the thumbnail background to a checkerboard. These options change depending on which of the panels that you have selected. If I switch to the Brush panel, you'll see a different option in the menu. For example, we have options for importing and exporting brushes or creating new categories of brush. Now let's take this a step further in the Color panel. It's a 100% certainty that not everyone watching this video will have the same Color panel view as we now see on my screen. Part of the reason is that I have the advanced options set for the Color panel. That means that we see these other tints and shades down at the bottom. But there are more settings in the menu that means we can use them to show different controls. If you don't like seeing sliders, for example, you might want the color wheel instead. And in fact, we don't even need a triangle in the center of the color wheel. We can switch to using a square. But notice also how the menu changes depending on which of the options I have selected. As you can see, there are a great deal of areas that we can customize throughout Affinity. It's also likely that many people will change these settings without really understanding what's happening. That means that you might find that your screen doesn't look like any of the Affinity videos on YouTube, and it never will. That is, unless you reset everything back to the default settings and erase all user data. The way to do that is by restarting the application whilst holding down the Command or Control key. That will delete all the user data and configuration and start with a completely fresh installation. Now, I'm not going to do that in this video because it also wipes out all my saved brushes, macros and other assets that I've created. Now, earlier I mentioned the Brushes panel and the options for controlling and organizing brushes. That seems to surprise a lot of people when I first show it them. Something else that often surprises people as well is how the Affinity brush controls work, which is why I recommend watching this video next. Thanks for watching today, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you soon for another video.